Namaskar and welcome. Well, Japan, a close friend of India and a country that is key to development finance in many parts of the world through its overseas development assistance to the developing world. It has a new Prime Minister designate. Fumio Kishida has close to 30 years of political experience, having represented Hiroshima in the House of Representatives since 1993. Now, that consistence would make him a popular leader. He was the foreign minister for 5 years under Shinzo Abe and is seen likely to continue with his policies. What to expect from Kishida will be in focus tonight. I'm Mark Lynn. Let's begin with the headlines. The Democratic Party in Japan chooses Fumio Kishida as its leader to be the Prime Minister until November, when Japan is scheduled to go to the polls for a general election. Kishida is seen as a consensus builder. He is likely to maintain Japan's security as well as foreign policy posture. Kishida is seen as a friend of India, and during his visit as foreign minister in 2015, he supported the Japanese investments in Make in India for strengthening manufacturing for the Indo-Pacific region, and he also advocated greater maritime cooperation to protect sea lanes. The British Army to start driving tankers as queues for fuel continue across the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson seeks to quell concerns, saying that supplies were returning to normal. The country's Petrol Retailers Association, they say that 37% of their member stations were out of fuel. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan meets the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Sochi after the US President Joe Biden had refused to grant a one-on-one meeting with his Turkish counterpart on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. The Defense Acquisition Council, headed by the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, approves proposals worth 13,165 crore rupees. In a boost to Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India, 87% of procurement to be done from domestic sources. 25 ALH Mark III helicopters costing 3,850 crore rupees to be acquired. Rocket ammunition worth 4,962 crore rupees to be bought, strengthen the armed forces. The cabinet clears the doubling of Nimach-Ratlam railway line. This is worth 1,095.88 crore rupees. The doubling of the Rajkot-Karnalos railway line, which is worth 1,080.58 crore rupees, also approves the listing of Export Credit Guarantee Corporation of India Limited. This is to promote people's ownership through public participation and equity holding of the company and other schemes. This new scheme, Pradhan Mantri Poshan Shakti Nirman, is costing 1.31 lakh crore rupees to be launched by the government and will provide nutritious food to crores of school-going children and will subsume the midday meal scheme. The political crisis continues in Punjab. Captain Amrinder Singh's meeting with the Union Home Minister Amit Shah fueled speculation. Ghulam Nabi Azad writes to Sonia Gandhi demanding the convening of an urgent CWC meeting. Senior Congress leader Kapil Sibal says that the party is without a president and doesn't know who is taking the decision. India's women's cricket team is all set to play a first ever pink ball day-night test match against Australia in Brisbane, which begins tomorrow. The star batter Harmanpreet Kaur misses out the upcoming pink ball test match because of a thumb injury. Well, Japan's struggle to emerge from the pandemic-induced doldrums will put the focus on the next Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's economic policies. Now, having won the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's leadership race on Wednesday, Kishida is unlikely to rock the boat by overhauling the current pro-business reflationary policies undertaken by Abe and his successor Yoshihide Suga.
The Liberal Democratic Party in Japan choosing Fumio Kishida as its next leader. Kishida, seen as calm and mature, defeated former Defence and Foreign Minister Tara Kono, often described as outspoken, in a second-round runoff vote.
Now is the time to realize a positive cycle of growth and distribution and deliver the fruits of growth throughout the country. I would like to increase income and salary for as many Japanese people as possible. I think that's the kind of economic policy I would like to bring in.
Two women made history by vying for the top job, including Sane Takaichi and Sieko Noda, but they dropped out after the first round. Japan is not fully prepared to welcome a woman Prime Minister yet, and the number of women in the parliament remains low.
Kishida had a cautious stance during the LDP election on policies related to gender and diversity. I have seen him make comments that made me think he doesn't understand at all how serious climate change is, so I am very worried.
I was personally convinced by Kishida's proper policies, and I am hoping for the best.
No matter who becomes the leader of the ruling party, I don't think it makes any big difference. However, with Kishida, the bureaucrats will get to work. In that sense, I think he will run the next administration smoothly.
In 2015, Kishida visited India as foreign minister. During the visit, he promised that Japan will contribute to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Make in India initiative to help the nation become a base of economic growth for the Indo-Pacific region and the world.
Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida visited India from January 15th.
I chose India as the first country to visit following my reappointment because of my belief that the partnership between Japan and India is a special one.
Minister Kishida looked back to the path Japan and India have taken over the last 70 years since the end of World War II, and he proposed strengthening the 3 bridges that link the Indo-Pacific region. He also paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister Modi.
Kishida succeeds Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, who did not seek re-election with the perception that his popularity is low. He was in office for just 1 year. Kishida is almost certain to become premier at the parliamentary session that commences on Monday, October 4th, since the LDP has a majority in the lower house. He is expected to form a new cabinet and reshuffle the LDP executive in early October. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
So let's take a look at who exactly is Fumio Kishida. We said he's a soft-spoken leader who was the foreign minister under Shinzo Abe, and he was the foreign minister several times, in fact, from 2012 to 2017 in many cabinets of Shinzo Abe. Now, he held several other positions as well in a long political career which spans nearly 30 years under several prime ministers, Mori, Obuchi, Koizumi, Fukuda and Abe. Now, he beat Taro Kono, who for the party's leadership, and he won by 257 to 170 votes, and this was in a second runoff. And he will succeed Yoshihide Suga, the outgoing leader, who didn't seek a re-election. Now, Kono, who was well educated in the United States, has been in charge of the country's vaccine policy and is considered as outspoken. During his tenure as the foreign minister, Kishida negotiated accords with Russia as well as South Korea, which is a fellow ally of the United States, but it still is not on the best of terms with Japan. Now, he's also, as we said, a close aide of Shinzo Abe, and he has been a strong advocate of nuclear disarmament, considering that he represented Hiroshima, 1st District, and he's represented it since 1993. He's elected 9 times so far, in fact, 9 terms. And before that, he was a bank employee. So he's considered to be calm and honest by his colleagues. He's a law graduate. He had graduated from law from Waseda University in Tokyo. A reputation among his fellow colleagues for being calm and honest, and had studied at the Waseda University in Tokyo studying law. So this brings us to In Focus tonight, and we're going to be discussing this. Fumio Kishida, Japan looks to the future. This is our In Focus discussion. We can have it up on the board. In focus tonight, here it is. Fumio Kishida, Japan looks to the future. And to discuss this, we have with us we have joined by two eminent guests, Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa, former Indian ambassador to Japan, and Professor Srabani Roy Chadri, chair of the Center for East Asian Studies at JNU. Thank you very much, ladies, for being with us. Ambassador Wadhwa, let me start with you. Now, we know that well, we may be putting the cart before the horse here, because this man has to, seek a general election in the month of November. And the party seems to be doing well, and it seems to be popular. But, of course, his predecessor, Yoshihide Suga, had a very high disapproval rating. So that is a matter of concern. How would you look at, the emerging scenario?
Well, you're quite right to begin with. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Suga, who was there for a very short while, just about a year, his popularity ratings were low, and perhaps that was one of the reasons why he decided not to seek re-election of the leadership of the LDP. But before he had taken this decision, we find that Mr. Fumio Kishida, who is now being elected the LDP, the head of the LDP party, he had already thrown his hat into the ring in the end of August, because even the last time, if you recall, he was one of the leading candidates, but he lost out to Mr. Suga. So, he has not been a very surprising candidate. And one of the interesting things was, at the moment Mr. Suga said that he would not stand for re-election, I think immediately there were a lot of indicators, including the stock exchange, and I think the popularity of the party immediately went up. So that was true, and that was also perhaps just to do with circumstances because of the pandemic. And Japan has done rather not as well as the other OECD countries. Let me put it that way. To begin with, the start was rather slow. Now they have about 50% of their population vaccinated, but there were a lot of problems. And therefore, Mr. Kishida, when he looks ahead, and of course, he just won the leadership of the party. Now on Monday, I think he will be elected as a leader in the parliament, and then he has to go in for polls, yes, which should be by about mid-November. So there is a path before him, before he really is certainly, that he would be elected as Prime Minister for a longer term.
Professor Chaudhary, the fact is that the Japanese system is such that they keep, publishing these opinion polls regularly. And we see that the LDP seems to be a popular party, much more popular than any other party there. But we also saw that Taro Kono is far more popular than the current Prime Minister designate. So would you see, that causing a bit of a split in this party? Or because before Shinzo Abe became Prime Minister, there was a lot of musical chairs in the Japanese system.
Let me go back to what was the results looked like if you look at it through the percentage formatting. Initially, in the first round, when all four contestants were voted in, you saw there was an only difference of one vote. That is, Kishida had got 38.4% vote, 33.60% vote, a total vote, and Kuno had got 33.46% vote. If you look at the second round vote and you split it up between the rank and file and the National Diet members, you still see that Kuno has more votes to that of Kishida. But what it looks like that the LDP definitely went forward, and since this time many faction members were given the right to vote as they felt like, it still looks like political stability was much more important within the party circle rather than maverick of what is Kuno often told in the media. So to that extent, I feel even as they go to the polls, Kuno would definitely support Kuno's fraction would support Kishida, and they will go through. But Kuno is a younger person. He's, 1960 born. So my presumption is that we can still look forward to him as a premier of this country, in near future.
Okay. But 64 years is also relatively young. I mean, considering for the Prime Minister's post these days, and probably will have a reasonable term if he is elected. We're going to take a look at what he did say when he came to India. He gave a lecture at the Indian Council of World Affairs, and let's take a little brief, of what he did say when he came here in 2015, and then we'll come back to you.
Right after my reappointment, I'm here in India, and it gives me a great pleasure to be able to realize this visit, which I promised with Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he visited Japan last year. I chose India as the first country to visit following my reappointment because of my belief that the partnership between Japan and India is a special one. It is a partnership that should drive advent of the new era, an era when the Indo-Pacific region becomes the epicenter of global prosperity.
So it's a relationship that's going to drive the advent of a new era, Ambassador Wadhwa, and we've seen that, the relationship between India and Japan has only gone from strength to strength. Under Prime Minister Abe, there was ODA assistance and investments that range between $2 and $4 billion every year. What do you see? I mean, do you see this continuing and going much further?
Well, absolutely, without question, because I think what we do see in Mr. Kishida is really continuity, and which is why he's had the support, I think, of really the senior leadership of the party. And certainly Prime Minister Abe will continue to be an important player as he was. And we must remember that Mr. Kishida was associated with Prime Minister Abe's foreign policy from 2012 to 2017, which really was one of the very high points of our relationship. We have annual summits. Mr. Kishida himself led what is called the strategic dialogue between the foreign ministers of the two countries. So he knew India extremely well. And of course, one can say that his speech at the ICWA in 2015 January perhaps reflected the policy of Prime Minister Abe since he was his foreign minister. But there is no doubt at all, with his long association with India, he has been part of the structure. He has seen this entire dialogue growing. And I think we can certainly look forward to a very, very strong relationship under him.
Indeed. We also know, Professor Roy Chadri, that the Indo-Pacific is the latest theater of the world, in terms of what everyone's eyes are on. And India and Japan, to what extent, are they going to see a greater alignment? Because we see that the US and Australia have formed the AUKUS along with the UK. So, I mean, in this context, you see a greater relationship, especially in terms of maritime security and the sea lanes, because this is another point that he did mention when he came here in 2015, that the sea lanes are extremely important for both maritime powers, which is what India and Japan are.
Even in today's, post-election, when he went in front of the national press, Kishida continued to say that he has three resolves as far as his foreign policy goes, and one of the most important, it being to value democracy. Second was to look at peace and security being maintained within the region. If peace and security of this entire Indo-Pacific is to be considered, India-Japan is a common, alliance. And if you look at the current Quad summit that had just got over, though Suga was representing Japan, we realized that there is a lot going on as do-good, platform through Quad, and I think this will continue. As far as AUKUS I don't see it as an divergent for Japan and India to and the Quad countries to come together. Rather, it would be two different platforms through which work would happen. And maritime security would definitely be beefed up between Japan and India in the current years to come through.
Well, my producer has found another soundbite that he says that is worth listening to. So let's listen to this. Kishida also highlighted shared values of India and Japan that are key to securing the Indo-Pacific region. He said that it was important for Japan and India to strengthen their maritime cooperation, and both sides should even more proactively assume their responsibilities to protect open and stable seas under their partnership.
Today, the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region are becoming important not only for Japan and India, but for the entire world. Japan intends to contribute to building a new era for the Indo-Pacific region based on the special partnership with India. Universal values such as democracy, freedom, open economy, and the rule of law are indispensable for the Indo-Pacific region to remain stable. Japan and India are the most successful democracies and free nations in Asia. I would like to emphasize that leadership from both countries is essential for the Indo-Pacific region to foster an order supported by democratic values, open economy, and the rule of law.
So, Ambassador Baldwin, this was in 2015, and those words can ring true even today to a large extent. So, what would you say? I mean, have the circumstances changed to a large extent? ASEAN with RCEP, that is one issue in which India did not participate. Has that changed? Caused some sort of changed the atmosphere a bit?
No, I don't think so at all. In the context of the bilateral relationship, and this is what we're really talking about, I think he's going to go very much by the main pillars of foreign policy, again, are going to be what we saw under Prime Minister Abe. So I think we are going to see a focus on the FOIP, the Free and Open Indo-Pacific. We're going to see a focus on certainly the Japan-US relationship. But equally on the Quad, and I just heard Mr. Chadri talk about it. So, what has happened is that we've seen a strengthening of the Quad. One must remember that it was in Fumio Kishida's time that, as foreign minister, that Japan became a permanent member of the Malabar exercises. Okay. So I think we're going to see a strengthening of this relationship, both in the context of the Indo-Pacific. Both countries have talked about the centrality of the ASEAN insofar as our policies are concerned. So I think what we are seeing is a much closer relationship. The bilateral relationship, certainly the political relationship has structures in place, which support it. One can see, and a very important aspect of our relationship is really these annual summits. Right. Unfortunately, during the time of Prime Minister Suga, we didn't see a summit because I think really the pandemic. But I'm sure, once the pandemic is behind us, or is more controllable, I'm sure we're going to see a summit between the two countries. And it would be the time then, provided, of course, and we hope that Mr. Kishida becomes Prime Minister, as expected, that he will be visiting India. So one does certainly see the political relationship doing well. The economic relationship in many areas, such as the high-speed rail, if you look at the development cooperation and the major projects that Japan has in India, helping us build our infrastructure. Right. Japan is always going to be a very, very important partner for India. So I do not believe that our not joining RCEP has really made such a difference to the bilateral relationship.
So you're speaking largely from the bilateral point of view, and of course, because one of the main points was that they would strengthen the Make in India for India to be a manufacturer for the world. So, I mean, in that context is what whether RCEP was having an issue with that. But the point is, Professor Roy Chadri, the fact is that Japan has made available funds to many countries at very easy terms. which China has not, which is surprising that why, China's Belt and Road Initiative was picked up so quickly and, Japan's overseas development assistance not so fast. I mean, are there any reasons for that?
As far as Japan's ODA programs goes, they have certain principles laid out in their ODA policy, considering it to be humanitarian in nature, does not have to conflict with the set countries, host countries, political systems, etc., etc. And I personally, my take on the ODA program of Japan has been that it has been basically littoral in nature, that is in the Southeast Asian countries, followed by India, and has not really concentrated on the inner Asia, especially Mongolia is only country that gets a larger, significant amount within the inner Asia community. And I think that is why probably Japan lagged behind in its ODA program, because till around the 1990s, their ODA program was very resource oriented, that is resource diplomacy was major focus. Okay. It's only after the 1990 that they changed their policy towards more humanitarian and not really being resource oriented. So therefore, I think Japan lost out, especially as China aggressively went forward with this BRI concept.
Ambassador Wadhwa, the fact that the infrastructure projects, especially with railways, that Japan has put into India, I mean, we see the Delhi Metro for one, significantly, change the profile of the city. To what extent do you see, these investments building a greater trust for the future? I mean, we've got a 50-year plan also with certain investments in the bullet trains and all these other things. This is a relationship that can be defining, as he said, for a new era. What do you see as the potential?
I do believe it really is already a very major and defining relationship, insofar as India is concerned, probably one of our closest relationships. And these infrastructure projects are really long-term projects. I should share with you that, Japan has development cooperation projects in almost every state in India, barring one or two. And this is something very few people know. And I think they are here for the long haul. And it isn't only the development cooperation, but also their companies coming to India. Because one must remember that India provides a very, very large market. And now with the churn in China, and with what happened with COVID and the call for diversification of supply chains, I think India becomes a very, very interesting and very important destination for, I think, investments from Japan also. So certainly this is going to be a very important relationship, both economically and it already is politically, because, we cooperate in so many platforms together. And there is a great convergence of views because, as we heard Mr. Kishida said, our shared values, it's two big democracies of Asia, and, our long history of very good relations.
Indeed. Professor Roy Chadri, also the fact is that we have cultural links as well, which is Buddhism. Apart from that, not only the people-to-people connect can be made stronger. What do you think are the kind of impediments? Would language be an impediment, you think, between the two countries, or are we overcoming that over time?
Language has been an impediment, especially if you look at the SEPA that we've inked, and we wanted a nursing population to go into Japan there is a huge need for this community in the aging population of Japan, and therefore a need. However, it hasn't been successful essentially because of the language barrier. However, if you look at Japan and its education policy beyond 2004, there has been a strong move towards education, incorporating English into the education. However, it's been much slower than that they had expected, and language will continue to be a barrier, but Japan is also working in India by creating a large number of platforms through which Japanese language is taught within India. There has been a special forum with Ministry of External Affairs and Japan Foundation who teach Japanese language to the language teachers such that they are able to have more language schools across our country. And I think in future, probably if we are able to motivate more students, population to look at Japan and Japanese language, we would be able to, bridge this gap to a large extent.
Ambassador Wadhwa, so taking that topic further, would you see, language and skill set development, because the Japanese model of work also is, they are hard workers. They have, they came from a pretty bad period post Hiroshima and Nagasaki to rebuild their country. And we saw that, that kind of effort seems to still be continuing. They also have a model of peace, which, India seems to be a nation that has a similar peaceful coexistence model. You see them, and there are so many significant areas of natural cooperation, but language is an issue.
Well, to begin with, I think, in successive summits, our prime ministers have talked about the importance of people-to-people relations. I really wouldn't think that language is so much of a problem. But yes, the Japanese are encouraging more centers of, learning the Japanese language in India, which is very useful. But I think where they are really contributing is in the area of skill development. So if Japan has programs to do with us improving not only our engineering skills, cooperation with IIMs and IITs, and several such programs, but also at the level of, skill development at the technical level. So I do believe that, language notwithstanding, this area of cooperation between our people is, I think, mutually beneficial to both. Because as you also know that Japan is looking for greater migration inwards because of their problem of a graying population and so on. And I think they do look at us, look at getting trained people from India. For that, there seems to be that language is a sine qua non. So they are, interested in more people learning Japanese. But I must say something where we can improve really when we look at that is for more students to go to Japan.
To study.
And one of we probably from South Asia, most Indian students tend to look west, but there are more students from Bangladesh and from Nepal in Japan and from India. And that could really make a difference if we were able to do that.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa and Professor Srabani Roy Chadri. Thank you for enlightening us on the future course of Indo-Japanese relations under the Prime Minister designate, Mr. Kishida. Moving on to our next story then. More than half of China is reeling under power cuts and rationing. The country's industrial sector is in chaos. Poor communication about the situation and also power rationing. These have made the people who are confused, the residents there, quite angry. Quite unusual. In fact, they want to protest in China. So the power cuts are mainly due to insufficient coal supply.
China is witnessing an unprecedented power supply crisis that has turned critical in recent days, threatening entire power grids as industrial production grinds to halt and traffic lights fail amid power rationing. With more than half of the country enduring power cuts, making it one of the most extreme energy rationing in the nation's history, especially as it hit regular households. It has triggered widespread alarm among much of the population and plunging the nation's industrial sector into chaos. Poor communication and unclear timeline for power rationing has worsened the confusion, with many angry and confused residents taking their complaints to social media. The power cuts are mainly due to insufficient coal supply. As temperatures drop in China's northeast, residents have started to turn up the heating, driving up electricity usage. Many companies, including small firms, have had to shift production to overnight, reduce output or cease operations entirely. Experts also expect the wide-reaching impacts from the dramatic cuts in energy consumption to last until the end of the year. Residents of Shenyang described their concerns after power cuts affected residential compounds, traffic lights and factories in China's northern Liaoning province. A power cut lasting around 8 hours had hit a residential compound in Hunan district the previous week and left streets in complete darkness. On Wednesday, China also demanded railway companies and local authorities raise their game in shipping vital coal supplies to utilities as regions key to the world #2 economy grapple with power cuts that have crippled industrial output.
Water and electricity were cut. Many people came to buy candles and borrow portable chargers to charge.
Only when vehicles drove past could you see lights on. I ride an electric scooter and the light of the scooter is on. Everything else is dark. You have to climb up stairs if people live on high floors. When power was cut, you have to climb 10 floors or more than 20 floors.
Goldman Sachs estimated that as much as 44% of China's industrial activity has been hit by power shortages, potentially causing a 1 percentage point decline in annualized GDP growth in the third quarter and a 2 percentage point drop from October to December. It was cutting its 2021 GDP growth forecast for China to 7.8% from the previous 8.2%. The country is in grip of a power crunch as coal supply shortages combined with strong power demand from manufacturers, industry and households push coal prices to record highs and trigger widespread curbs on usage. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, the UK is reeling under a fuel crisis and the British Army is pitching in. Soldiers will become drivers of tankers to replenish empty pumps. But the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, he's urged the people there not to resort to panic buying because he says that supplies will be normal soon.
British soldiers will start driving tankers to replenish empty pumps as drivers queued again for fuel after days of shortages, despite Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying the situation was improving. Business Minister Kwasi Kwarteng said 150 soldiers had been mobilized and would be driving tankers within a few days.
Versed in military defense issues knows that it takes a couple of days, sometimes a few days, to get troops on the ground. We've decided to do that, and I think in the next couple of days people will see some soldiers driving the tanker fleet. And you're seeing an HGV driver shortage all over the world. I mean, even in Poland, which is in the EU, there are a shortage of about 123,000 drivers, and also in the United States. So these supply chain issues are affecting global economies.
By the early morning rush hour, there were already long queues of cars in and around London and on the busy M25 orbital motorway circling the capital. Signs were up at some cities announcing no fuel was available.
It's not that difficult. There is lots of petrol stations open. They're open, but the queues are like an hour at least. You have to wait at least an hour. If you're lucky, you can get on the petrol stations where there is 2 queues. And one of the queue, it's shorter, but that's really rare. It's really bad.
A shortage of around 100,000 drivers has sown chaos through supply chains and raised the spectre of empty shelves and price increases at Christmas. Boris Johnson has sought to quell concerns, saying supplies were returning to normal while also urging people not to panic buy.
What we want to do is make sure that we have all the preparations necessary to get through till Christmas and beyond, not just in the supplying the petrol stations, but all parts of our supply chain. What we want to see is an emphasis on high wage, a high skill, a high productivity approach to our economy. What I don't think people in this country want to do is fix all our problems with uncontrolled immigration again.
Britain left the EU single market at the start of this year, preventing transporters from recruiting drivers in the bloc. To tackle the shortage, the government has said it will issue temporary visas to 5,000 foreign drivers, a measure it had previously ruled out. But it remains to be seen how many takers there will be for this offer. For the last few months, a shortage of over 100,000 qualified truck drivers, also known as heavy goods vehicle drivers, has disrupted many industries such as food and fuel, causing ripple effects in grocery stores, restaurants and now gas stations. A combination of Brexit and COVID-driven slowdown has literally added fuel to the fire. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Russian President Vladimir Putin told his Turkish counterpart Tayyip Erdogan on Wednesday that Turkey is shielded from a gas crisis, which has gripped Europe thanks to the Russian-built Turk Stream gas pipeline. So speaking at the start of the talks with Erdogan in the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi, Putin also thanked the Turkish president for his support of the pipeline, which runs to Turkey from Russia via the Black Sea. The inland parts of the link stretch further to southern Europe and are part of Moscow's plans to bypass its political foe, Ukraine, in exporting gas to lucrative European markets. Russia commissioned the Turk Stream with an annual capacity of 31.5 billion cubic meters. This happened in early 2020. So Russian gas producer Gazprom has said that it has increased total gas supplies to Turkey by almost 160% from the start of this year. The presidents of both the countries on Wednesday began talks on curbing renewed violence in southwest Syria and on possibly expanding Moscow's sales of military defense systems to Ankara despite US objections. Germany's pro-business Free Democrats favor a coalition government with Armin Laschet's CDU over the SPD of Olaf Scholz, and they plan further talks with the Greens before meeting the CDU and SPD at the weekend about building a three-way coalition. Volker Wissing's comments came after a smiling selfie of FDP and Green leaders together at an initial meeting which went viral, and it became the subject of jokes as well. The Greens and FDP, from opposite ends of the political spectrum and at odds on a range of major issues from finance to climate protection, are seen as kingmakers after an election on Sunday that was narrowly won by the Social Democrats. Both the centre-left SPD and Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative bloc, which slumped to a record low result, would need the centre-right FDP and leftist Greens as partners to get a parliamentary majority for a coalition government. The FDP Secretary General Wissing said that he could reveal nothing about the talks late on Tuesday, as the small circle had agreed to stay mum, but that a bigger group of people from both parties would meet once again on Friday. While German outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel often prefers not to take a compliment, this time she may have to grin and bear it. Sold out even before hitting the shelves, the first edition series of 500 Merkel Bears is nearing completion. The bears, once ready, will go to their happy customers. This family business dates back to 1920. The Hermann family has been producing bear personalities for several leaders, including Barack Obama and the British Queen. The Union Cabinet has approved the PM Poshan scheme. This is to provide midday meals to students of more than 11.2 lakh government as well as government-aided schools across the country, and the scheme will run for 5 years at a cost of 1.31 lakh crore rupees. Here's more on the major cabinet decisions.
The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, chaired by Prime Minister, has approved the continuation of National Scheme for PM Poshan in schools for the 5-year period, with the financial outlay of 54,061 crore 73 lakh rupees from the central government and 31,733 crore 17 lakh rupees from state governments and UT administrations. Union government will also bear additional cost of about 45,000 crore rupees on food grains.
इस योजना के माध्यम से सरकारी स्कूलों में जाने वाले विद्यार्थियों को या गवर्नमेंट एडेड स्कूल हो उसके विद्यार्थियों को भी ऐसे 11,20,000 से ज़्यादा स्कूलों के करोड़ों विद्यार्थियों को दोपहर का भोजन भी मिलेगा और 5 वर्ष तक चलने वाली पीएम पोषण में 1,31,000 करोड़ रुपए का व्यय होगा।
पोषण को याद करते ही ये खाना कितना और न्यूट्रियस हो, लोकल मटेरियल और क्या जोड़ा जा सकता है, उसमें समाज की सहभागिता में और क्या किया जा सकता है, ये सारा विषय एक प्रायोरिटी में आती है, इसीलिए इसके नाम पीएम पोषण रखा गया है।
The government has undertaken a series of measures to boost exports. Government approved continuation of the National Export Insurance Account Scheme and infusion of 1,650 crore rupees grant in aid over 5 years. Cabinet gave nod to listing of Export Credit Guarantee Corporation Limited through the initial public offer on the stock exchange. This will benefit companies by allowing increase in maximum liabilities to rupees 2.03 lakh crores from rupees 1 lakh crore by 2025-26. Government has also given approval of capital infusion of 4,400 crores to ECGC Limited.
नेशनल एक्सपोर्ट इंश्योरेंस अकाउंट इस नाम से एक स्कीम चलती है जिसमें 1,650 करोड़ रुपए अधिक कैपिटल इन्फ्यूजन का निर्णय आज कैबिनेट ने लिया.
In another major decision, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has approved doubling of Neemuch-Ratlam railway line at the total estimated cost of rupees 1,096 crores. It has also approved doubling of Rajkot-Kanalus railway line. The total estimated cost of the project will be 1,080.58 crore rupees.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने आज रेलवे के 2 महत्वपूर्ण प्रकल्पों को अनुमोदित किया, मंजूरी दी उनके नेतृत्व में कैबिनेट ने. इसमें से पहला मध्य प्रदेश के नीमच रतलाम की जो लाइन है, इसकी डबलिंग की मंजूरी दे दी गई है. 133 किलोमीटर की रेलवे लाइन के ऊपर लगभग 1,096 करोड़ रुपया डबलिंग पर खर्च होगा, इस पर इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी. और इसके अलावा दूसरा गुजरात राज्य से है, राजकोट कानालूस लाइन को भी डबलिंग की मंजूरी दी गई है. 111 किलोमीटर की इस रेलवे लाइन पर 1,080 करोड़ रुपए का व्यय होगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी.
लाइन की डबलिंग होने से उस क्षेत्र के उद्योगों में, विशेषकर सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री, आपके वहाँ लाइमस्टोन की इंडस्ट्री, प्लस वहाँ टूरिज़्म और वहाँ की जो कल्चरल हेरिटेज है, उस सब एक्टिविटीज़ को एक बहुत बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण बढ़ावा मिलेगा. दूसरा प्रोजेक्ट है गुजरात में राजकोट कानालूस लाइन. इस प्रोजेक्ट का भी डबलिंग का आज अनुमोदन किया माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने. 111 किलोमीटर की इस लाइन पे 1,080 करोड़ रुपए का इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा. आप सभी जानते हैं देवभूमि द्वारका, पोरबंदर, ओखा, बेदी, सिक्का, वो एक ऐसा एरिया है जिसमें हैवी इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटी है. तो उस इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटी में सुधार आएगा.
The Modi government is continuously taking major decisions in a phased manner in order to mitigate the corona crisis, and it is yielding results as the country's exports has shot up at a historic high level. With Rishi Kumar, Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, industry has lauded the decision of the government for boosting export, and the move will create over 6 million jobs in the MSME sector.
Cabinet decision on promoting exports is a welcome move. The outlay of 6,000 crores towards entities providing insurance cover is expected to yield incremental exports of over 5.6 lakh crores in the next 5 years. These decisions will create over 6 million new jobs in the MSME sector. This augmented by the production-linked incentive schemes which the government has done with over 2 lakh crores over the last 12 to 15 months. Over 15 key sectors will create national manufacturing champions and generate employment opportunities.
The Defence Acquisition Council on Wednesday approved the capital acquisitions proposals for modernization and operational needs of the Indian Armed Forces amounting to approximately 13,165 crore rupees. Rupees 13,165 crore approved for capital acquisitions procurement worth 11,486 crore rupees to be earmarked for domestic sources. Key approvals include helicopters, guided munition and rocket ammunition. The DAC accorded approval for the procurement of 25 advanced light helicopters at a cost of 3,850 crore rupees. Approval also given for procurement of terminally guided munition. The DAC accorded the approval with the continued thrust towards Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India. The political crisis in Punjab Congress is intensifying, while leaders of the Congress party are accusing each other for the party's imminent disintegration that's taking place. Now, it's apparent that the leaders don't seem to respect the decisions of the High Command. The leadership vacuum in the Congress is playing out in the state where the party had enjoyed a majority. Disintegration of Punjab Congress seems inevitable. The latest twist in the tale is former Chief Minister Amrinder Singh calling on Amit Shah Earlier in the day, Congress leader Navjot Singh Sidhu released a video statement on Twitter. He referred to a compromise with issues and agenda in Punjab as the reason behind his resignation as Punjab Congress president.
मेरी आज तक किसी नाल कोई निजी किड़ नहीं रही, ना ही मैं निजी लड़ाइयाँ लड़ियाँ ने। मेरी लड़ाई मुद्दों दी है, मसलियां दी है और पंजाब पक्खी एक एजेंडे दी है।
Meanwhile, the slugfest continues within the Grand Old Party. Manish Tiwari has expressed deep distress over the Punjab Congress crisis. Senior Congress leader Kapil Sibal alleged that the party has been weakened deliberately as the party does not have an elected president.
What Punjab required at this point of time was a safe pair of hands, was stability that could keep the ship on an even keel.
ये तो साफ जाहिर है कि कांग्रेस का कोई अभी इलेक्टेड प्रेसिडेंट नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी निर्णय तो कोई ले ही रहे हैं ना। तो ये आप भी जानते हो, मैं भी जानता हूं, तो उसके बारे में आगे बात करने का कोई औचित्य नहीं है।
Asserting that stability in Punjab is essential for national security, the BJP on Wednesday hit out at the Congress over the political volatility in the border state and called it a colossal failure on the part of Rahul Gandhi.
असाधारण असफलता राहुल गांधी जी का यह पंजाब के पूरे इस प्रयास से सामने आता है और कहीं न कहीं राहुल गांधी के इस असफलता को छिपाने के लिए कांग्रेस पार्टी ने जिस प्रकार से पत्रकारिता और पत्रकारों पर हमला करना आरंभ किया है, यह अपने आप में दुखद है।
Apart from the BJP, other political parties have also raised questions after Amrinder Singh's statement on Sidhu. Aam Aadmi Party said that instead of working in the interest of the public in Punjab, it is only indulging in petty politics.
कांग्रेस के सीनियर नेता और पंजाब के भूतपूर्व मुख्यमंत्री के द्वारा दिया गया वक्तव्य काफ़ी गंभीर है, जिसमें उन्होंने कांग्रेस पार्टी के अध्यक्ष श्री सिद्धू की कार्यशैली और उनकी निष्ठा पर ही प्रश्नवाचक चिन्ह लगाए।
पूरी महाभारत सत्ता की है और कुर्सी की है। इनको पंजाब की गवर्नेंस से, पंजाब के लोगों से, उनकी समस्याओं से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। सिर्फ अपनी कुर्सी की लड़ाई ये लोग लड़ रहे हैं।
Due to the political crisis in Punjab, governance has been put on the back burner in the state. Instead of working for welfare of the people, leaders of the ruling party in Punjab are busy in political mudslinging. Ajay Vikram Singh's report, DD India. The confession of the nabbed terrorist Ali Babar has once again exposed the terror link of Pakistan. Now, a report which is submitted to the US Congress says that Pakistan is home to a total of 12 terrorist outfits. Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed figure in the US report, which are targeting India, that is, these terrorist organizations. Pakistan's nefarious intentions have been foiled by the alert security forces in Uri. And let's take a look now at there's more on Ali Babar of Pakistan, who was nabbed in the Uri sector.
A confession which has once again exposed Pakistan's terror links. This 19-year-old terrorist is Ali Babar from Punjab province in Pakistan. On Tuesday, the Indian security forces nabbed him from the Uri sector.
The second terrorist pleaded us for his life. Even though he has fired on us a number of times in the contact, we accepted his surrender and handled him humanely.
The terrorist in his confession told the media that his masterminds are sitting in Pakistan. He narrated how he was trained by the Pakistani army and how he was given the task of transporting a large cache of weapons into India.
पाकिस्तानी जो रही पाकिस्तानी जो हमारी कभी पार्टी का थी उन्होंने हिंदुस्तानी आर्मी का फायर बोला जो हमारे दूसरे साथी जो छोड़ने आए थे जो तो पाकिस्तान दो रहते थे अंदर आना था वो भी पीछे था, 4 करोड़ पीछे था नेपाल के, और हम 2 अंदर और के अंदर पार कर गए थे। हिंदुस्तानी आर्मी ने इलाके को घेरा और सील कर लिया था। सील करने के बाद उन्होंने ऐलान किया, जो पड़ा था उन्होंने ऐलान किया तुरंत करा के अपने आप को हमारे बारे कर दो। बोला उसमें 7 आदमी तनस उसको तो मार गिराया, और मैंने जब देखी उसकी डेड बॉडी तो मेरे से प्रकाश हुआ, मैंने उसके सरेंडर करने का ऐलान कर दिया।
Pakistan's nefarious intentions to fuel unrest, panic and instability in India have been exposed time and again. Terrorist camps are running at several places in Pakistan. One such camp was destroyed after a surgical strike by India in 2016. Security forces are alert on the border and have thwarted repeated infiltration attempts over the past several days.
It is just not possible that such number of activities can take place without complicity or connivance of local Pak military commanders.
Pakistan's actions across the border are nothing short of cowardice. Internationally, Pakistan has been held responsible for granting refuge to terrorists. According to a recent report submitted in the US Congress, Pakistan is home to a total of 12 terrorist organizations, including the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which target India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had raised the issue of terrorism at the United Nations General Assembly and has continuously appealed at different world stages to eradicate terrorism. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Some sports news. Well, Indian women will play their first ever pink ball cricket test match, a day-night match that is, against Australia. The pink ball tends to skid a little more, and it also moves a lot under lights, so openers Smriti Mandhana and Shafali Verma will need to adjust to the conditions. Now, India last played Australia in a test match in Adelaide in 2006. Australia has a potent pace attack and they are likely to trouble the Indians. Mithali Raj's side broke Australian women's 26-match winning streak with a 2-wicket win in the third ODI on Sunday.
In a historic first, Indian women will play their first ever pink ball test against Australia beginning Thursday, and the focus remains on how the batters will adjust to the moving ball in twilight conditions. The pink ball tends to skid more and it moves a lot under lights, and it would be interesting to see how the opening batters Smriti Mandhana and Shafali Verma adjust to the conditions. Mithali Raj's side will enter the test with some momentum behind them as they were able to break Australia's 26-match unbeaten run in ODIs after defeating the hosts in the final ODI by 2 wickets. Earlier this year, India had played their first test in almost 7 years, and owing to heroics by Sneh Rana, Mithali's side was able to walk away with a famous draw. India and Australia had last played a test in 2006, and 15 years later, both sides now find themselves on the cusp of playing a test under lights. Australia has a potent pace attack and they're likely to trouble the Indian batters, so it would be interesting to see whether the visiting camp has it in them to grind it out and play out a few tough hours on the pitch. So in the absence of an experienced middle order, Mithali Raj once again holds the key. Dipti Sharma performed nicely in the test against England, and she would look to continue with her form in the longest format. Jhulan Goswami is coming off a player of the match performance in the third ODI, so she would enter the pink ball contest with high confidence, and it needs to be seen whether the likes of Meghna Singh, Pooja Vastrakar and Shikha Pandey are able to provide her with the desired support at the other end. Sports Desk, DD India.
That concludes News Night tonight. Thanks very much for being with us. Namaskar.